sight is arguably our most dominant human sense, the sense that we rely on most. I really value my sight, and I find it hard to imagine what life must be like without the ability to see the world around you. But according to the World Health Organization, there are roughly 36 million blind people in the world, and a total of 1.3 billion who have some form of visual impairment. For many, losing your sight is a big deal. Of course, there are many animals which have evolved to be active at night or in dark environments, such as in caves or in the deep ocean. And it's sound they use, not only to communicate with one another, but also to navigate. Many bat species have really mastered this art of navigating and hunting using sound instead of sight. And the way they do this is now inspiring scientists and designers to come up with ideas which might offer more help to blind and partially sighted people. I'm Patrick I with 30 Animals That Made Us Smarter, an original podcast from the BBC World Service that explores some of the amazing ways in which animals have solved human problems. If you've enjoyed the story so far, then please do spread the word, and remember, we want your expertise too. What examples do you have when it comes to animal-inspired designs? We'd love to hear from you. Please email us at 30animals@bbc.com, or you can contact us via our website, bbcworldservice.com/30animals. You can see our privacy notice there too. Well, now in this episode, number 5, Bat and Visual Aids, I want to share some great ideas with you about how the techniques which bats use to navigate in the dark could assist blind people. Flight has enabled bats to become one of the most widely distributed groups of mammals in the world. Apart from the high Arctic, Antarctic, and a few oceanic islands, they exist in almost every habitat on Earth. So you'll find them in Asia, Africa, North and South America, Europe, and Australia. Their forelimbs are adapted as wings, and they're even more maneuverable than those of birds. The largest bats are commonly known as fruit bats or flying foxes because their faces look like foxes. They can have a wingspan of 1.7 meters. That's the average height of a woman, whilst the smallest, with a wingspan of just 15 centimeters, is the Kitti's hog-nosed bat. It weighs just a couple of grams, about the same weight as a paperclip. Animals like bats, some whale species, and cave swiftlets, which are a species of swift which nest in caves in Indonesia, all use a technique that you may already be familiar with, called echolocation, to navigate their surroundings and hunt for food. Now, the interesting thing about echolocation is that it can provide sensory information that in some ways is similar to human vision. For example, bats can not only locate and catch an insect whilst they're flying, they can also gather information about its size and in some cases, whether it has a soft or hard body. So, how does it work? Well, imagine that classic moment from an action movie. Our hero is on board a submarine, staring at a screen of a glowing sonar system. A steady pulse of sound spreads out from the submarine, out into the dark abyss. As long as nothing's there, nothing's detected. But as soon as that sound wave comes into contact with an object that's within range, the sound is reflected back and a marker pops up on the screen. Our hero fires the last missile, destroying the enemy sub, saving the world from total annihilation. Echolocation kind of works a bit like that. Well, maybe minus the doomsday scenario. But it's true, as bats fly along, they act in a similar fashion to the submarine sonar. By sending out high-frequency or high-pitched calls, up to 200 of them every second, and listening out for the returning echoes, they can build up a sonic map of their surroundings. Let's just think about this for a moment, because what's going on inside a bat's head is remarkable. They can build up a sort of 3D image of their surroundings, which is constantly changing as they fly along. And it's all done using sound. They can even use this image to estimate the distance of an object from how long it takes for the sound to return. We can't usually hear the sounds made by bats, as they're well above our human hearing range. Bats vary how they produce pulses of sound to distinguish between both stationary objects and their moving insect prey. Now, different bat species echolocate within specific frequency ranges that suit their particular environment and their type of prey. This means that we can identify many bat species not by sight, but by listening to their calls. Since those calls are outside of our hearing range, we do this with the help of a bat detector, which is a device that converts high-pitched calls into sounds that we can hear. In the past decade or so, there's been increasing interest in whether we are capable of echolocation. And the answer, believe it or not, is yes. A team of researchers, led by Juan Antonio Martinez Rojas from the University of Alcalá in Spain, found that human beings can indeed develop echolocation skills. Producing certain kinds of tongue clicks, people were able to identify objects around them, which clearly could be life-changing to those that are blind. I'm not going to lie here, I was gobsmacked when I found this out and I couldn't resist giving it a try. Initially, I felt a little bit silly walking around my house making these strange clicks, but even after about a minute, I was able to get a sense of how far away the walls were simply by listening to each of the returning echoes. You can try this at home too by using what's called the palate click, which Martinez and his team found was the best sound. You start by placing the tip of your tongue on the palate or roof of your mouth, just behind your teeth, sucking so there's a slight vacuum, and then move it quickly backwards. Hope you've got that. Okay, I'm going to give this a try. Here we go. That's really cool. Remarkably, some blind people had already taught themselves how to use echolocation. One of the best known of these echolocators is an American called Daniel Kish. Daniel lost his vision when he was a year old, but since then, with the help of echolocation, he's learned how to climb mountains and even ride a bike. It really makes you think and wonder about the limits of human perception. Martinez's team are confident that no special skills are needed to learn how to do this. 2 hours a day for a couple of weeks are enough to distinguish whether you have an object in front of you. And with another 2 weeks, you can start to sense textures and even tell the difference between whether you're walking past bushes or alongside a metal fence. Martinez suggests that this technique would be a useful skill for firefighters, rescue teams, or even people lost in fog when vision is poor. It's fascinating to think about just how rich a mental image you can develop with this technique. It's certainly detailed enough to see shapes and textures and movement, so I can only guess that it must be like a 3D mind map of the world. We can't equal the 200 or so clicks per second of bats, but this isn't necessary. Clicking every few seconds with silent breaks is enough. And whilst this might seem amazing to be able to analyze these sound waves to generate a picture of your surroundings, we already do this without realizing it. Laura Thaler and her team at Durham University in England have found that this skill often emerges spontaneously in children as they experiment with ways to explore their environment. Thaler agrees with other researchers that this is a skill we can all learn, and for the blind and for those that are visually impaired would typically be used alongside a cane or a guide dog. It's not a replacement for canes and dogs, but it can help avoid collision with objects at head height and gives an impression of the broader surroundings which other aids can't achieve. Now for the exciting bit. How can we use this knowledge to assist blind or visually impaired people? Well, in India, the National Association for the Blind, or NAB in Bangalore, have worked with Deepa Academy for the Blind and Innovation Hub Technologies to develop a mobility aid called Audition based on the principal use of echolocation. It's a handheld device which looks like a bulky mobile phone with earbuds, which can be used to detect objects within a 3-meter radius and produce sound patterns which convey information about these objects. A transmitter radiates inaudible ultrasound, and the receiver transforms the reflected sound into electrical signals. The device computes the information and calculates the distance from the obstacle. The distance is then translated into audio notes to inform the user how far they are from an object. It's basically doing the exact same job as parking sensors on many modern cars. Notes play with increasing speed and pitch as you get closer to an object. So with this device, as you walk along, you hear a series of musical notes which rise up a scale as you get closer to an object. In 2009, a research collaboration including a group at the Polytechnic University of Valencia in Spain came up with a design for a helmet that takes real-time images of the world and combines it with depth data from a laser rangefinder and presents this information as audio cues through headphones. This is essentially an enhanced version of human sonar, made possible by a piece of technology. Of course, many visually impaired people use a white cane, and at the Indian Institute of Technology, a team have tried to make it even more useful by designing the smart cane, which is a combination of a white cane and an ultrasound system. The cane identifies obstacles using sonic waves, and their presence is conveyed through a distinct pattern of vibrations which are felt in the user's hand. Just like clicking, I'm sure it will take practice to use a cane like this effectively, but it's another great idea. I'm in no doubt that these developments will continue to get better and better. Any device that can help enhance the lives of the visually impaired must surely be a good thing. But I also think it's fascinating to realize that we can also sharpen our own sensory skills. So, like our super echolocator Daniel Kish, why not learn how to echolocate for yourself? After all, hearing is believing. You can find a list of sources of information for this episode on our website, bbcworldservice.com/30animals. And please leave ratings and comments about the podcast where you can, and the hashtag on social media is 30animals. By the way, if you're interested in hearing about other innovations which could assist people who are blind, search for the Lend Me Your Eyes episode of another one of our BBC World Service podcasts, People Fixing the World. There's also the Could Bionic Eyes Help Me See Again episode of Crowd Science. And for the bat lovers amongst you, we've got another great story about how bats have inspired human design later in the series. Check out number 23, Bat and Robot, when we'll be discovering how a flying robot, which can be used for surveillance work, began life as a bat. But before then, in number 6 of 30 Animals That Made Us Smarter, we'll be meeting the world's toughest animal, which whilst it may not win any beauty contests, could help extend the shelf life of vaccines for transport across the world. I got to tell you, this stuff is better than science fiction. Thanks for listening.